The top cop who put his badge on the line for justice.
You know the name Doug Poppa? Yes, I do. God bless Doug Poppa, an honest cop.
He was a man of integrity. His testimony last summer freed an innocent man from jail who had already been convicted of shooting his ex-wife. But Poppa's going public cost him his job as an undercover cop.
I was elated, of course, but then as he testified, I was somewhat concerned for him, because I knew that they were probably going to crucify that man.
Sometimes the truth has a price. That may be the lesson of a Virginia police officer who says, in trying to do the right thing, he ended up paying for it.
The message you're sending is, see, we did it, Doug. You don't come out, you don't buck the system. No matter what the reason is, you just can basically keep your mouth shut. But if I wouldn't do it all over again, I would take the badge and I would leave it on somebody's desk and get out of police work. Because the day I can tell the truth because somebody's pressuring me, and the day the system doesn't want me to tell the truth because somebody's pressuring me, is the day I leave the badge on the desk and walk away.
Poppa was fired for insubordination. One man who confronted truth and consequences.
This one was basically an execution, you know, this of two very young people.
And we're more than a year into this case, and we still don't have a lot to go on. So we're asking for the public's assistance to try to move this case forward. Let me turn it over to Connie Land.
You know, today is about Sydney, and this is a plea for information to come forward. And after a year of no resolution, no peace, and we're no further along, it's disheartening as a parent to know that there is, this is just, we're still back to square one. And what I can tell you about Sydney, I think after a year, people forget who these victims are. And so I want to tell you about Sid. Sydney was really one of the most genuine, kind-hearted girls you'd ever meet. And she loved everyone unconditionally. And she would say, "Mom, why can't you just love people for who they are? And why can't you just see the best in people?" And that encompasses who Sydney is and how she was and how she led her life. She is our first child. She's a sister to 3 siblings that have lost. And the ripple effect of her death has still not even begun to be felt by not only our family, but our friends. And so today is a request for people just to refresh your minds back to last year and to think if there's anything that you remember, a conversation, something that would trigger these people that killed them, brutally killed them and left them. And so we're just asking people to think again of anything that may be informative, that they would call the police, call the detectives, and give them this information. So as a family, we're pleading with the community. She did not deserve this. She did not deserve to die the way she did. And so I'm asking people, please come forward with any information that you have about this case so there is some resolution and these people are off the streets.
Sure. The question was about Shane Valentine. So there was a Shane Valentine who quickly became a person of interest. This is all public record because he was arrested. he made some threats. He did fire a gunshot into the mother of Neo's Kauffman's mother's house. And when we learned that, we took that case because it seemed that he would be a likely suspect. And homicide quickly jumped on that case, and we apprehended him in California, brought him back here. He had some other pending charges for some home invasions. So he is currently in custody and awaiting sentencing for a number of charges, including the shooting. But like I said, a year into the investigation, we've got a number of calls about him. At this point, we do not believe that Shane Valentine is our suspect. At this time, we can say that he is not our suspect. So Shane Valentine is not our suspect at this time. So we want to make that clear for the record. If something does come up and some evidence is uncovered that makes him a suspect, we did look at him, but we don't have anything to say he's our suspect at this time.
We have not ruled out Shane Valentine as a suspect. We are still looking at him as a person of interest in this case. Do the right thing, reach out to us, and allow two grieving families the justice that they deserve.
I cannot fathom that someone would know information, that they don't come forward. It's like carrying a weight of rocks. You carry it everywhere. The load, you're always aware. It's always in your mind. It's either in the back of the mind or your front of the mind, but it's always there. We've done billboards. We've done several billboards. We have done national news TV shows, crime shows. We've done press conferences. We are working on podcasts. Any social media, whatever we can do to keep this out there. That's what Sydney would expect me to do. That is the way that I get to honor her.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Truth or Consequences podcast from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm your host, Doug Poppa, a former law enforcement officer. I'm an independent investigative journalist. I worked in the hotel casino industry out here for 20 years as an investigator, and then a director of security at 2 properties. Listen, you all know on August 10th, we lost Connie Land. She was a remarkable woman. It's hard for me to talk about this. I met Connie in January of 2019 when I was doing the investigations related to former Judge Melanie andress-tobiasson, and then the Land Kauffman murders was mentioned, and as a result of that interview that I did with now former Judge, Las Vegas Justice Court Judge Melanie andress-tobiasson, I got to look into and research the murders, which led me to reach out to Connie Land. I've known Connie now for over 3.5 years. January 23 will be 4 years. We did multiple podcasts on my podcast. I was on some other podcasts with her, and then she did plenty of podcasts by herself before I even knew who Connie Land was. Sydney Land and Nehemiah Kauffman were brutally murdered. You heard then homicide detective Dan McGrath describe to the news. October 27th of 2016, their bodies were found in Sydney's apartment, where she was living there with her boyfriend, Nehemiah Kauffman. Next month, October 27th, will be 6 years. Connie is not going to be around, at least not physically. In spirit, she will, for the 6-year anniversary. Connie Land spent almost 6 years of her life continuously trying to get justice for her daughter and Nehemiah. I'm not going to talk a lot about the murders in this podcast because I will talk a little later on about it to give you some background if you're not familiar with it. And I'll have links in this podcast description, the video description, to the stories you'll see going across the screen here in a few minutes. But what I'm going to do is Connie's voice is going to live on in my podcast. These murders aren't solved. Nobody's been brought to justice. So as long as I'm breathing, as long as I'm alive, I will keep this case in the public eye until we get justice for Connie Land and Nehemiah Kauffman. There's two families out there still, Sydney's family and Nehemiah's family, that want closure in this case. And if you've been following my podcast and the stories that I wrote for the Baltimore Post-Examiner, several dozen of them, and several dozen podcasts about the murders, you could see there's allegations of police corruption, incompetence, a cover-up, negligence, and a lot of that stuff that Connie talked about and we talked about some time ago has turned out to be true. And if you saw the last couple of podcasts I did with Connie back in January, and then with Alethea Kauffman, Nehemiah Kauffman's mom, back in January, you'll see where a lot of the stuff, the cover-ups and stuff, why things were covered up. They botched the crime scene. They failed to take the bullet out of Nehemiah Kauffman's mother's house on October 8th when Shane Valentine fired into the house. Steve Land, Sydney's father, after the crime scene of the double homicide was cleared by the Las Vegas Metro Police, he went back in there to retrieve some of her belongings. I did a story on it. You'll see it come up on the screen here. And he found evidence left behind by the police. This whole case is a disgrace, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing because I'd be here for hours doing it. But what I'm going to do in numerous podcasts, we're going to do a deep dive into this case, and we're going to go back to the beginning. There's a lot of stuff that I know that I haven't talked about on podcast, but 6 years, this case ain't going anywhere, so you're going to hear about everything that I know. And hopefully in the future, I got some things set up. You're going to hear from some retired homicide detectives and crime scene analysts who, with their experience, who know something about this case, and some of them are not here in Vegas, and they're going to talk about crime scene procedures and their take on this murder. Several years ago, I talked to a retired, well-known homicide detective that investigated thousands of cases for a major police department. And I mentioned this in one of my podcasts, I think 2 years ago, that he said this case was a disgrace. He had like 8 pages of yellow pad notes from looking at my podcast and reading the stories on the Baltimore Post-Examiner. So anyway, we're going to talk a little about the murders. But what I want to do here in this podcast, ladies and gentlemen, I want to read some social media post that Connie posted over the years around her daughter's birthday, Sydney, around March. I believe it was March. And then the month of October was very bad for her because, of course, that's when the bodies were found. She used to call me up the past couple of years or send me text messages early in the morning of the 26th when we believe the murders happened. And she would say, Sydney's being killed right now. So you're going to hear some, I'm going to read some of Connie's social media posts. Before I do that, I want to read a social media post that was posted by Alethea Kauffman, which is Nehemiah Kauffman's mom, the other victim in the unsolved double homicide. Mrs. Kauffman posted this on her social media, and I want to read it. Rest in peace to my sister and friend Connie Land. I can't believe you are gone. We became sisters after losing our children on October 27, 2016. You were an amazing mother, daughter, sister, and friend. I am profoundly heartbroken by your unexpected passing. You and Sydney are once again reunited forever in the kingdom of God. I will continue our fight in bringing those to justice who took your beloved Sydney and my beloved Nehemiah on October 27, 2016. You are truly missed and truly loved, dear friend. That's from Nehemiah Kauffman's mom, Alethea Kauffman. In 2019, Connie went to New Orleans, Louisiana. And that was the CrimeCon convention. I don't know what, they have a lot of them that come up every year. She went down there, and she wanted to meet, there's news people down there from different crime shows and stuff, so I didn't go, but she wanted me to go. I couldn't go at the time. I had something else going on. But she went down there, and she brought a bunch of leaflets and stuff and papers that she wrote about the murders and handed them out. While she was down there, one of the persons that she spoke to and met was Matt Gutman. Now, Matt Gutman is the senior national correspondent for ABC News. He was down there because they try to pick up on stories. A week after Connie's passing, Matt Gutman wrote this on his social media. Connie Land lost her daughter in a still unsolved double murder in Las Vegas in 2016. Connie fought for her daughter Sydney's legacy and her memory, demanding that the authorities find the killer and acknowledge the multiple and sometimes glaring missteps made in the initial investigation. She set up that crusade with remarkable valor. She kept up that crusade with remarkable valor up until last week. This was a week after Connie had passed. I spent many hours talking to her on the phone and working through the various scenarios and possible leads. She was always optimistic, always kind, and she never stopped loving her daughter Sydney. That's from Matt Gutman, senior national correspondent for ABC News. And I spoke to Matt also a couple of times. Connie was a remarkable woman. You had to know her. She had a heart as big as gold, and she was relentless, whether it was her confrontations with the police and getting justice for Sydney. I'm going to read, get this here. Connie wrote this on her social media, I believe it was from Facebook, on April 28th, 2018. This is Connie's writing. Please read the entire post. It is a huge pill to swallow. I hope it helps people understand what was really going on. My daughter was an incredible, loving young woman. I share these incidences with all of you so you see anything happening with your daughter, son, or family member, be alert, aware, and proactive. No family is safe from the nightmare we now live. I did not see Crime Watch Daily before it was aired. Many people saw it before I did. I had never heard the 9/11 calls. I had never seen the crime scene photos. It was surreal and beyond heartbreaking. I could not compute that was Sydney in her blood. A tender mercy to block the pain. We all relived the worst day of our lives. There was a lot of information I had heard before, and some information that was new, all completely heartbreaking. We put Sydney's life and business out to the world in hopes people will be inspired to come forward. The police had to review and approve all content on the show prior to airing the program. So many people have commented, myself included, how unbelievably calm the male 9/11 caller was, a best friend to Neo and a family member's boyfriend. And he was that composed after seeing 2 dead bodies. I also find it odd that Sydney, Neo, and friends were all supposed to meet up at a hotel that night, and no one showed up to the hotel. Not one called, texted, and no one checked on them for over 36 hours. Really? Sydney spoke to these quote-unquote friends multiple times per day on various social media platforms. Doesn't add up. This is only one sliver of what is really going on. I have posted several interviews and news clips of the FBI investigation and Metro Police and Vice corruption, cops sleeping with prostitutes, and the cops on the payroll of pimps, corrupt DAs cutting deals with prostitutes and pimps. These people and these situations are tied to the people involved in Sydney's murder. I have posted all of those interviews and news stories for a reason. Prostitutes, whose parents are cops, judges, and daughters who are being prostituted out by pimps. There is so much corruption. I have heard Sydney was introduced to Neo only a few months, 2 months or so, before she died. Sydney was a victim. Some may disagree. Her life was threatened, her every move was monitored, she was manipulated and feared for her life. She did not have a choice. I met Neo a few times. He was very nice, he was polite. I did not have any reason to think otherwise. If Sydney liked him, we wanted to get to know him. She never wanted to bring him around. I started hearing things that were disturbing. I spoke to Sid about it, but I never really understood the magnitude of what was happening. I never knew she was in danger. We were at the dentist one day. Neo came with Sydney. Neo would not leave Sydney alone and followed her back to the exam room. The dentist told him he could not be in there. He did not want to leave, but reluctantly did. I got a call from the dentist about the incident, and they expressed how odd it was and their concern of his possessiveness with her. Excuse me. Some co-workers from the Palm restaurant told me they offered Sydney a ride home from work, and Sydney's comment was, quote, "Neo would kill me if I got a ride home," unquote. They told us Sydney was crying one day at work. She was trying to figure out how to get out of her lease. When we found out Sydney got an apartment in her name only, a little over 1 month before she died, we told her to move home, and we would do what we needed to do to cover the payment, but to get out. $1,700 rent was too much for her. She was the only name on the lease. We were so angry. On September 24th, I got a call from a Nissan car salesman who had worked with Sydney that morning. Neo was with her. He called me because I was a co-signer on her car. He told me how verbally abusive, condescending, and mean Neo was to her. He said, quote, "Mrs. Land, whatever you do, you get your daughter away from that guy. If I was not at work, I would have clocked him." The salesman heard Neo telling Sydney he did not want to drive in a piece of shit Nissan. He wanted a Dodge or BMW, and he wanted to go to those dealerships. The salesman said, quote, "If she was my daughter, granddaughter, niece, I would do whatever I can to get her away from him," unquote. That day I met with Sydney at lunch and told her if she did not get away from him, it would end tragically for her. I would put roadblocks in her way to try to keep her safe. I never knew what was really happening. She did not come around much. Sydney's good friends told me Frankie and Neo would not allow Sydney around her good friends. I was told by Sydney's friends when they called her phone, Neo would answer the phone and would not let Sydney talk to them. They controlled who she was with and who she spoke to. She was not allowed to see them. She was starting to withdraw from her family and friends and everyone that was good in her life. I learned this on the way up to the mortuary. Kendall, her sister, called a few times. Neo answered and would not let Sydney talk to her. Kendall called again. Sydney answered, and Kendall said she could hear Sydney tell Neo it was only her sister on the phone. When Shane Valentine threatened to kill Neo, Sydney, and Frankie, he went and shot up Neo's home. No matter how scared she was, she would never have come home and put her family in harm's way. I am sure it was only reaffirmed the danger she was in and could not come home, or they would shoot up our house and hurt our family. I know she was terrified. She told me she was. She told no one. She was surrounded by a pack of wolves who she considered her family and friends. Being involved with that group of predators cost her her life. Sydney severed all ties with Frankie because of the lifestyle Frankie was involved in. Who knows why she allowed that monster back in her life? I am sure she was lured in by her manipulation and lies. I heard all of these things after her death. I wish I knew before. I think back to the premonitions Steve and I had. The whole month of October, we were feeling overly anxious. Steve made several comments. One night I woke up and looked over. He was sitting up in bed. He said, quote, "I'm going to get a lawn chair and sit in front of her door so no one can go in and hurt her," unquote. On another occasion, he said, quote, "I'm going to move in with Sydney so I know she is safe," unquote. One night, he was very upset and said he was going to go over and kick Neo's ass and drag our daughter out of that apartment. We never knew how much danger she was really in. The pain of knowing we had all these premonitions and could not save her is unbearable pain as a parent. I told her friends and people who consider themselves family completely responsible for her death. Please continue to share these posts. I hope my transparency of our experience helps another family. And Connie wrote that on her social media on April 28th, 2018. The air conditioning's coming on, so you're making a little background noise, but it should be fine. Connie wrote this October 22nd, 2019. I have had to digest the events of yesterday and the travesty we witnessed with the plea deal of Molly Mall. Just so you know, people, Molly Mall was a 12-year pimp from Las Vegas who was running girls, hundreds of them, all over the United States, running a 12-year continuing criminal prize. And I believe it was the end of 2019. I did stories on this. You'll see him come up on the screen. He was given a pre-indictment plea deal by the U.S. Attorney after a 5-year-plus investigation involving allegations of corruption with certain members of the Criminal Intelligence Division, the Las Vegas Metro Police, and the Vice Unit. No Metro cops were indicted. He was given a pre-indictment plea deal of 1 count of running an illegal business for the purpose of prostitution. He's now in prison for, I think, 2 or 3 years. He's not a convicted sex trafficker. They didn't charge him with any federal statute of sex trafficking, human trafficking. No cops were arrested or charged. And so his name is Molly Mall. That's his nickname on the street. This is his pimp name, music name. He's a music producer also. He was in California in Beverly Hills. But his real name is Jamal Rashid. So let me go back and read that just so you know what she's talking about here. I've had to digest the events of yesterday and the travesty we witnessed with the plea deal of Molly Mall. It is a complete disgrace. For those who have followed the story, this again clearly displays the true corruption and the lengths of corrupt few within the LVMPD, the District Attorney's Office, and FBI. How far they will go to protect their dirty little secrets. There has been too much proven and revealed for it not to be true. If everyone was lying, why is Ocean Fleming getting out of 19 felony charges and prison in 1 month if the evidence wasn't true? That is what initiated the investigation to begin with. All the people who provided sworn affidavits, evidence, eyewitness accounts, and fellow officers are all liars. Amazing, isn't it? Basically what she's saying, they had all this evidence and nothing happened. And Ocean Fleming was another Las Vegas pimp who was in jail for a very long time. He was sentenced to, I think, almost life with the possibility of parole, I think, after 5 years. He was a former bodyguard of Molly Mall and broke off, became a pimp. He was arrested out here by Metro years ago. And then when they found out that his case, Ocean Fleming's case, and other pimps' cases were investigated by corrupt Las Vegas Metro Vice detectives, and including a district attorney, assistant district attorney, allegations were against her that she coerced witnesses. She was also the boyfriend at the time of the lead detective named Chris Bauthman. They made a deal with Ocean Fleming, and all the charges were dropped. He had like 20 charges. He was in prison. They dropped all the charges. He ended up getting out. He's now out. So that's what she's talking about. She talks about Ocean Fleming. Just because that was the U.S. Attorney's determination does not mean that that is the truth. They wanted this case to go away. She's talking about the Molly Mall case. It is too big. I am sure with a guy like Molly Mall, he had celebrities, athletes, musicians, top executives, politicians, and so many more who utilized his prostitution services. He would make Heidi Fleiss look like a nun. I would assume the damning list he has on people they would never want to come out. Could you even imagine? Regardless of the outcome of the FBI investigation, which the only correlation to Sid's case is that the judge tied Shane Valentine to Molly Mall and corrupt cops. She's talking about then Las Vegas Justice Court Judge Melanie andress-tobiasson. I have witnessed too much negligence, cover-up, and corruption throughout this entire murder investigation. I have not even shared all that has happened. For 3 years, nothing but negligence, incompetence, and lies, re-victimized again. Unfortunately for me, I have never been one to sit back and watch injustice happen. I would rather stand alone and fight for the truth and what I know is right than to remain silent and sit idly by and watch it happen. That has never been me. I will continue to share the information I have. I will continue to fight. I will not give up. This is unjust and wrong, what has happened with the FBI investigation. I will not let this happen to Sydney. Let me be crystal clear. People may discount what has been said to, quote, she is a grieving mom, unquote, of her daughter was murdered. I would do whatever I could to find the answers, unquote. And then she goes on to say, everything I've stated, short of my own opinions, I have the proof to back it up. And those stories that I wrote articles on with the Baltimore Post-Examiner. I have several podcasts relating to the Judge Tobiasson, the vice corruption on Metro, Molly Mall, and you'll have all the links into this description of this video. This is from October 22nd, 2019. Connie Land wrote this on her social media. Again, October 27th, 2019. October 27th is the date they found Sydney and Nehemiah's bodies in their apartment. My thoughts of today are not of sadness and pain, but of gratitude, love, and recognition for the tender mercies and miracles we have experienced the past few years. I am grateful, so unbelievably grateful, to be the mother of my 4 kids, Sydney, Preston, Gavin, and Kendall. What a blessing to have the gift of these kids in my life. They are my pure joy and heaven on earth. I am grateful for the gift of time. I treasure every day being with my children, grateful for the time we have been together. I am grateful for the gift of recognition of the fragility of life. I choose to live and love to the fullest every day. I am grateful to all the friends and family who have lifted us up in our weakest moments and darkest hours. You are the miracles in our lives. I love you all, and I am so grateful to each of you and appreciated and loved. To those who have picked up the torch to carry on the fight for justice for Sydney, I love you more than you'll ever know. I will forever... I didn't see this. I didn't read this before. I will forever be indebted to you. You are gifts and miracles in my life. To you, Doug Poppa, you are an angel. I will never be able to repay all you have done for us and for Sydney. You are a very special miracle and gift in my life. I know Sydney and my mom brought us together in this fight for truth and justice. You have fought tirelessly to be the voice of Sydney. Thank you. I am grateful for the miracle of eternal life for Sydney. I am so grateful for the miracle that Sydney is with my mom, and they watch over, heal, and protect our family. No pain and no sadness. Only light, pure love surrounds her. Who could ask for anything more than that? I choose to focus today on my incredible life, my incredible friends and family. I am truly blessed. Today I'm choosing to celebrate all that I have and grateful for. I'm going to read a few more here. And about 1 week after Sydney was murdered in 2016, I believe it was November 8th, 7th or 8th, Connie Land's mother passed away. And in 2020, November of 2020, her brother Michael passed away from complications of COVID-19. And Connie was going through a divorce. Her husband was separated before she died. So let me read this over here. March 24th, 2020. Happy 25th birthday to my beautiful girl, Sydney. Please help us celebrate her big 25th. Share fun photos, memories, or stories of Sid. Tags her in it. It's Sydney's day. I have a couple of memories of Sydney and the firstborn. And she says, I remember laying in the hospital bedroom, was dark, but the light came in from the nurse's station. I cried as I held her in my arms. She was perfect. I knew this was as close to heaven on earth as I can ever be. She filled my life with love and joy like I had never known until I held my sweet baby girl. A mother's love cannot be described, only felt. For 21 years you were here with us to celebrate your birthdays. Not nearly enough time. I think of what you would be doing now if you were here. All of the things we will never get to share and celebrate with you. You should be here. Not a day passes I don't think about your countless times. I love you, miss you, and continue to fight endlessly for you. I love you till forever and ever. And that was March 24th, 2020. October 26th, 2020. Today, Sid died 4 years ago. Although we found her on the 27th, she died on the 26th. These days are unspeakably hard for us. I will not allow myself, nor will I give the maggots who savagely murdered Sydney, the satisfaction of negative emotion from me, especially not these next few days. They should know I am coming, and I will never stop my hunt for anyone who has contributed to this case not being solved and justice being denied to Sid. You killed her, contributed to her death, withheld information, lied, covered up, are negligent, corrupt, you name it, I am coming. The truth you have worked so hard to cover is coming. In honor of Sydney, I would love for her true friends and family to share stories and photos to honor her remembrance, her life on these next few days. It provides an incredible sense of peace and comfort to us all. I know she is extremely close to us. It's the last one I'm going to read here. This is October 26, 2021. This was last year, and Connie's not going to be here on October 26th and 27th of this year. Not physically, she's going to be here in spirit. And like I said, I gave her my word a long time ago when I started this endeavor with her, that I will not stop doing what I'm doing until the murderers of Sydney and Neo are brought to justice. And I don't give one flying F what the police think of me, the homicide division, people connected with Sydney that I know have information that refuse to talk to the police. As long as I'm breathing, this case is not solved, you're going to hear it continually on these podcasts. And there's some other stuff going on that I can't talk about, but we'll leave that the way it is for now. October 26th, last year, 2021. Connie wrote this on her social media. There are particular days and times of my life that seem surreal. These past few years have been just that. I can't help but think of Sydney and her struggle to fight for her life. She died today. We learned of her death tomorrow. I never let my mind wonder if she suffered or was coherent of what happened. I know her death was slow. I can only pray she didn't know it. I think of all the POS's friends, you know what that means, pieces of shit, friends who know who did it and remain silent. I think of family that have turned their back on her. This is a war I will never stop fighting, and the injustice she has been shown. Till my last dying breath, I will fight for her and the truth. If someone said 7 years ago, this is what the next 7 years is going to be for you, I would have never believed it. Strokes, aneurysms, 7 brain surgeries, Sid's murder, the corruption cover-up, negligence, and all involved in her case, death of Mom and Michael, personal trials, so much unbearable sadness and pain. Time does heal just a little. I finally started to feel again after so many years. I began to mend and heal, and felt some of the anger and frustration I have felt deep inside begin to subside. The past few months, my life, my family, and everything I thought my life would be is being ripped apart again. The black clouds that were lifting are back. The clarity I was beginning to see is gone. My heart that was beginning to feel is numb once again, suffocated again with so much pain and sadness. My heart is being put through a meat grinder again. The obstacles and challenges continue unrelentingly. In brief moments of uncertainty and fear, I remember I am a warrior. I get to push and stretch to new limits, doing what seems impossible. I am learning to become a bigger, better, new version of myself. I get to remember I have been through more the past few years than most people will ever experience in a lifetime. Lucky for them. I think of my beautiful kids. Everything I do is for them. They are my life, and there is nothing I would not do for any of them. Amidst all of the sadness I feel today, I know Sydney is right here as our constant companion. I know my mom, brother, and a multitude of angels surround and comfort us always. Sydney, there is never a day that goes by that I do not think of you countless times. I love you and I miss you beyond comprehension and words. I know you are close because I feel you here. I love you forever and to infinity. One day, I know peace and happiness will come once again. Until then, I will keep pushing forward and moving past the many obstacles and challenges I face. And then she puts Sydney, March 24th, 1995 to October 27th, 2016. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was a cop, I didn't get emotional over nothing. I'm going to lower this here. I'm getting feedback here. It's driving me crazy. I guess you get older, you get kind of softer. Things hit you that didn't hit you when you were younger. And this murder case, ladies and gentlemen, 3.5 years of my life, I've been looking into this and writing stories about it. And I'm going to continue to do so. And there's a lot more stuff that Connie and I found out that I never reported publicly, which now, since this is 6 years going nowhere, this case, it's a cold case. It was a cold case years ago. Everything's going to come out on podcast. And there's some other stuff that I found out that just pisses me off that you hear in podcast also in the future. I'm not sure I covered everything here. I want to say something. Shane Valentine, and I said this in stories, okay, has been a pimp in Las Vegas. He's a convicted felon for robberies and home invasions, but he's been running girls for 10, 15 years, going back to high school kids, okay? Shane Valentine has never been arrested, and I said this in a podcast back, by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for sex trafficking. Ever. Never. Last year, I did a story. I was working on another story, and it's out there. It's the PP loans and all this stuff on it. And I talked to people on the street. As of last year, still, Shane Valentine was pimping out girls in Las Vegas. He's in some last year, I don't know where he is now, but at the time he was in some motel, downtown Las Vegas, pimping out girls, running prostitution. He's never been arrested by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And ladies and gentlemen, what the hell does that tell you? Okay? That is a bunch of bullshit. Okay? This guy's pimped out daughters of judges, cops, try to get other girls, even in high school, were working for him, that working prostitution. And this guy's never been busted for sex trafficking. Okay? You don't have to be an ex-cop to figure out there's something fucking wrong here going here in Las Vegas. Okay? Last week, or the week before last, I got a phone call. Like I said, I talked to you about this story. Me and Connie got involved in it involved Shane Valentine and stuff, but I found out that Valentine was getting his grasp into another young girl. And we had called the police, and she had called the police, and it didn't do any good. Nothing happened, okay? Connie made contact with the girl, and intervened and talked to her. And I got a call from the girl's father. It's out of state, didn't happen. The girl wasn't here from Las Vegas. And it's nobody that's connected with any of the stories that I've been doing relating to the murders or Valentine. This was just some other girl that he was going to get his grasp on and bullshit and get her into prostitution. Connie intervened, okay? And the girl got away from him. Last week, the father, this is back in the East Coast, he follows the podcast, my podcast company, saw that Connie had passed away. And he called me up, and he was very emotional. And I got to stop doing this. Connie, he wants me to tell you, thank you for what you did for his daughter. She's back home. She's got a job. She's doing good. She's safe. And he said it all was because of your intervention when you called her up, and I know you talked to her back then. Her name doesn't matter. Connie, you know who it is. I know who it is. And the father thanks you. So there it is, Connie. Another good job. Listen, I'm going to do this 4 or 5 minute clip I'm going to play here, because when Connie, you're going to hear from Connie. I'm going to give Connie the last word, and you're going to hear from her here in a few minutes about, she's talking about something she had wrote back in 2018, 2019. So you're going to hear her talking about this. And I got some stuff that's going across the screen when you hear her talking. But first, for those of you that not familiar with the Land Kauffman murders and other things that was going on with Metro that I reported on, both as an investigative journalist with the Baltimore Post-Examiner and now my podcast, I'm just going to give you, once you listen to this, it's an excerpt of a podcast I did in 2020, and it's about 4 minutes long. It just gives you a little synopsis of what you heard Connie talk about and what you'll hear her talk about here in a few minutes, so you get some perspective if you're not familiar with this case. The voice you're going to hear on this excerpt, and I'll play it, but again, this is a recording from an excerpt from a podcast I did in October of 2020, and mentioned in there, you'll hear then Las Vegas Justice Court Judge Melanie andress-tobiasson. She's no longer a judge, but she was back in 2020, and I interviewed her in May of 2018 when I was writing for the Baltimore Post-Examiner. Anyway, let me play this and get this thing going here.
October 27th will be 4 years since the bodies of Connie Land and Nehemiah Kauffman were found, both shot in the head, in their southwest Las Vegas apartment. As I have been reporting on for 19 months, the unsolved murders are surrounded by allegations of police corruption, negligence, incompetence, and a cover-up. Judge Melanie andress-tobiasson, in an on-the-record recorded interview with me in May of 2018, identified the persons responsible for the murders. She also said that the police had all the evidence to make arrests, and they failed to do so, claiming that evidence may have been destroyed by the police. If you have been following the Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa podcast, then you are familiar with Judge Tobiasson's statements that the murders happened as a result of her and her daughter Sarah being outed as a source of confidential information to Las Vegas Metro Police Officer Ty Bowden and his daughter Allie, just hours prior to the murders. Tobiasson said that the person who outed her and her daughter was none other than Las Vegas Metro Police Vice Detective Justine Gaddis. According to Tobiasson, that led to the murders of Connie Land and Nehemiah Kauffman. Tobiasson said it was her and her daughter who were meant to be killed, not Sydney and Nehemiah. Connie Land and her family have been fighting for answers going on 4 years. Judge Tobiasson told me in the May 2018 recorded interview with her, and later in an email, that Las Vegas homicide detective Jared Grimmett was providing confidential details about the Land Kauffman murder investigation to her. Tobiasson also told this to Connie Land in 2017, which is backed up by text messages between Tobiasson and Land, as I have reported previously.
Here are a few audio excerpts from Judge Tobiasson's interview with me. Keep in mind, as I have previously reported, Las Vegas Metro Police homicide detective Mitchell Dosh told Connie Land in a 2018 text message that Tobiasson was indeed outed by Vice detectives at the meeting you will hear Tobiasson describe. As I previously reported, Sheriff Joe Lombardo transferred Detective Justine Gaddis to the Homicide Bureau, a great place to be for a detective who likes to dime out confidential sources of information. A sitting judge has leveled some very serious charges against the police, and more recently, Judge Tobiasson's veracity has been bolstered by not only Sheriff Lombardo, but also by the FBI, as I have stated in the last few podcasts. Now, here are the audio excerpts.
So they bring her in for an interview with her police officer father. First question out of Justine Gaddis's mouth. Do you know Sarah Tobiasson? Yes, I do. She's one of my best friends. Second statement out of Justine Gaddis's mouth. We got your name from her mom. She says you're working as a prostitute for a pimp by the name of Shane Valentine. I get the call from Van Cleef, who is beside himself. He goes, I don't know what to do. And I said, how about you get the fuck back in there and fix this? I go, she just put a fucking target on my daughter. I go, you think this guy's going to kill me? He's not going to kill me. He's going to kill my kid. I go, what is wrong with you people? I said, there is no way that this was an accident. I go, no vice detective, I don't care if they've been there for one day, would do that by accident. I go, this was intentional. So I bring my daughter and Ollie to my house. I tell them, I go, you guys need to get to the house right now. You're not safe. So
you brought your daughter. You said you hang on. You said you brought your daughter and who to your house?
Allie, the daughter of the police officer that they had just outed me to. Van Cleef calls me back. He and Justine want to meet with me and my daughter, and I told them basically to, I won't tell you what I said, but it wasn't very nice. And I said, you guys have a reason for doing what you did, and I don't know what it is. I said, but if something happens to my daughter, we can have a real big fucking problem. So that night, unbeknownst to me at this time, Allie leaves my house and she puts out a tweet about the fact that she was called in and questioned by Vice. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, unfortunately, at this point, Allie was no longer associated with Shane Valentine. She was associated with Neo Kauffman. And like I said, they had had a beef because Shane was upset that Neo was taking Shane's goals. So that night at about 12:30, so it would have been 12:30, October 26th, 12:30 a.m., Shane Valentine, the guy by the name of Dominique Thompson, he went by Domo, D-O-M-O, and a girl by the name of Frankie, F-R-A-N-K-I-E, Zappia, Z-A-P-P-I-A. Shane, Domo, and Frankie, whose stepdad is a police officer by the name of Dano, D-A-N-O, Giersdorf, G-I-E-R-S-D-O-R-S. Go to Neo's house and execute Neo and his girlfriend, Connie Land. Dano,
right.
D-A-N-O,
right.
Giersdorf, is the stepfather of Frankie Zappia, one of the suspects in the double homicide that happened 8 hours after I was outed as a source of information to one of Shane Valentine's prostitutes who had left him and was now working for Neo. 8 hours later, her new pimp is killed by her old pimp because she puts out on Twitter that she had been called in and interviewed by Vice. They know, and everyone else knows, that this murder happened as a result of what they did that day.
So has anybody been indicted for this double murder?
No, that's what I just said. They're covering it up. And they know that the fact that they outed me got 2 people killed. They weren't the 2 people they were trying to get killed, me and my daughter, but it got 2 people killed.
Let me ask you.
I'll tell you, Joe does not want this story out there. They don't know that I know what evidence they have. Chances are they've destroyed it by now.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was from an excerpt from October 2020, very interesting. When she talks about Joe, she's talking about Joe doesn't want this out there. That was then Las Vegas Justice Court Judge Melanie andress-tobiasson from an excerpt from my on-the-record recorded interview with her in April of 2018. And I'll have the link to that full interview in the description section of this podcast. When she's talking about Joe doesn't want this out there, she's referring to Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo, who runs the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And, you can take it for what it's worth, what she said. And, we'll have more on this when I start delving. I'm going to do a smaller podcast with all these other like I got a lot of stuff coming out on other things I heard about what's going on in Metro and stuff like that. But I'm going to do a deep dive into this Land Kauffman murder. I'm going to start at the beginning, before even the murders happen. We're going to do small podcasts, many of them, and little at a time leading up to everything that we know until this day. So be advised, that number that's on the screen from the do not call that number, the 725. It's not, let me get that off there. It's not active anymore. If you have information, anybody, about these murders, okay, any information, who did it, somebody mentioned something about it, every little piece of information is important. I know it's almost 6 years, okay? You can contact the Las Vegas Metro Homicide Division, the Homicide Bureau, Crime Stoppers. If you do not want to talk to the police or Crime Stoppers, I will have my contact information where you can reach me in the description section of this video. So, it's 6 years, but the murders are still out there. And you heard what Judge Tobiasson said. She said she was getting that information from the homicide detective. Anyway, there's a lot of stories, and I'll have links into the description section of this video. I'm going to give Connie the last word. I'm going to take myself off the screen, and so you could see these articles and stuff going across the screen in full view. And Connie's going to get the last word. And like I said, she's reading something she had wrote back in 2018, 2019. And I will see you on the next podcast. Remember, the audio podcasts are on iHeartRadio and Spotify. If you can support my independent investigative journalism, because I don't have an income from this, it's paypal.me / I'll put it on the description section, Doug Poppa / PayPal, whatever it is. Anyway, appreciate you listening, and nothing's over until the person or persons who committed these murders on Connie Land and Nehemiah Kauffman in October of 2016 are brought to justice. And I know it's 6 years, but any case can be solved. Personally, ladies and gentlemen, I believe Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Homicide Bureau knows who did these murders, and we'll have more on that as it comes out. So we'll give Connie the last word, and thanks for listening.
In the murder investigation. The shooting on October 8th, because of Nehemiah's involvement with Shane, somehow spurred Shane to make death threats to my daughters Sydney, Nehemiah Kauffman, and Frankie Zappia. After the death threats to the victims and going over and shooting up Nehemiah Kauffman's mother's home, the LVMPD failed to bring him in. The case was closed a few days after. Considering this violent crime involved shooting into an occupied house, the crime scene analyst failed to recover the bullet the day of that incident. Sydney and Neo were found brutally murdered 2 weeks later. After the murder occurred, Shane Valentine was immediately named a person of interest. It was the homicide detectives that went back, retrieved the bullet from the October 8th shooting, and went after Shane Valentine for the home shooting, which ultimately resulted in his current prison sentence. Had the homicide not done so, I believe the LVMPD would have never followed up on the shooting, and Shane Valentine would have been allowed to continue to terrorize and victimize the Las Vegas Valley as he has been allowed to do so without police interference for many years. Unfortunately, the DA's office and their revolving door once again gave Shane Valentine, a violent repeat felon, a pathetic and weak plea deal. I fully believe the death of my daughter, Connie Land, and Nehemiah Kauffman could potentially have been avoided had the police department and the district attorney's office done their jobs by getting Shane Valentine off the streets and locked up. There are a select few who are corrupt within the LVMPD and the DA's office who have gone to great lengths to protect the criminals while re-victimizing victims and knowingly putting civilians in harm's way for their own personal gain. Ultimately, I hold Sheriff Lombardo and District Attorney Wolfson responsible for the actions, horrific crimes, and cover-ups that have taken place for so many years within the departments in which they are responsible for. They are elected officials who have forgotten the oaths taken to protect the citizens who put them in the powerful, influential positions they currently enjoy. I believe the homicide detectives have been given the daunting task of trying to solve a very complex murder riddled in corruption. A double murder I believe the upper echelon within the LVMPD and DA's office would like to make disappear altogether. I will never stop my relentless fight for Connie. Her voice was silenced, so now I am her voice. I am fighting to bring justice to the animals who violently and brutally murdered my daughter. I will uncover the sinister truth of her murder and the corruption tied to it. In the process, I hope to find justice for victims and families of victims who have yet to experience it.